Buenas tardes, mi gente, ¿cómo estamos? Estamos como medio vacío aquí, ¿qué pasó? George, did you scare everybody away? Oh, okay, yeah, the other sessions aren't finished yet. Buenas tardes, how's everyone doing? Good. I'm excited about this next panel. I'm actually serving as a substitute moderator, and I love it because it puts me out of my comfort zone. But these next two topics are very, very important in all of our communities, not just for the Hispanic community or Latino community, but just communities throughout our great nation. And I'm supposed to be, I got a special request that I'm supposed to ignite a fire in the attendees for these next, these next topics. So civic engagement and immigration panel. I'd like to, bring up our panelists to our stage. Are we ready? We're ready for our panelists? We're missing one. Huh? Sí, okay. Let me quickly introduce our panelists for this afternoon. I'd like to start off with Maria del Carmen Gutierrez Rodriguez. Try saying that a bunch of times, right? She's the Pennsylvania Voice Senior Director of Programs and Partnership. Maria del Carmen is an experienced organizational leader, a visionary thinker from Puerto Rico. She's committed to destructing institutional racism to promote equity with over 15 years of experience planning, developing, managing unions and community organizations. She has designed winning programs and campaigns that have resulted in outstanding achievements. She shared some of those achievements with me in the back. Before joining Pennsylvania Voice as Senior Director of Programs and Partnerships, she was the Senior Director of Membership of CASA. This multi-state position led efforts that transformed the organization into a national immigrant powerhouse, building and overseeing, organizing structure and programs of engagement, not only here in Pennsylvania, but also in Maryland, Virginia, and Georgia, and especially in our BIPOC communities. As PA Voice partner, she oversaw civic engagement. In Puerto Rico, she planned, designed, and oversaw a successful national campaign against the privatizing of Puerto Rico's public school system. As a Puerto Rican, she identifies herself, and I too, as a documented immigrant, embracing and affirming her culture, language, and tradition. So we have something in common, she and I. She's committed to Puerto Rico's decolonization and the sovereignty efforts. She believes that immigrants, including Puerto Ricans and indigenous communities, should participate in the electoral process not as an act of assimilation, but as an act of political power and self-determination. She's not going to be alone on this panel. I also want to introduce Pennsylvania State Rep. Joanny Cepeda Freitas, who was elected to represent Pennsylvania's 129th Legislative District on November 8th of 2022. Congratulations, Joanny. For over 10 years, she worked for Grand Street Settlement and held the position of Program Director for the Beacon Center. This is it's a school-based community center that's located in New York City. In addition to her role as Program Director, she worked part-time as college counselor for Malta Valle Secondary School. In 2007, business opportunity presented itself in Reading, Pennsylvania. She chose to leave New York. Yes. Glad she's in Pennsylvania to become an entrepreneur and a businesswoman. She relocated her family to establish Mi Casa, Su Casa Cafe, located in downtown Reading. She graduated from Kutztown University Small Business Development Center, Latino Business Resource Center Business Program. Same year, she became recipient of the James Hyson Entrepreneur Award from Community First Fund. She was awarded Business Person of the Year by Latino Chamber of Commerce. She's received numerous awards from Girl Scouts of Eastern Pennsylvania, Take the Lead Award, the Centro Hispano Greater Reading Chamber of Commerce, This is the really cool one, right? In February 2019, she was appointed councilwoman for District 6 in Reading. In June of 2022, she becomes the first woman to serve as president of the Reading City Council, where she served until January 2023, when she then takes office in the state capitol. Next person I'd like to introduce is State Rep Mike Schlossberg, who was re-elected to a 6th term in November 2022 and continues his commitment to community leadership. To address Pennsylvania's mental health care crisis, Rep. Schlossberg laid out his agenda, Hope for Pennsylvania in 2022. This would invest $100 million in public safety by creating safe and healthy communities, improve care by addressing provider and capacity shortages, and help more people through training, education, and outreach. This vision is leading the efforts in the General Assembly and within the Shapiro administration to commit resources necessary to build stronger mental health care for Pennsylvania. As a result, Representative Schlossberg was appointed by the Speaker of the House to the Behavioral Health Commission on Adult Mental Health established by Governor Shapiro in 2023. And since taking office, he has led many other legislative successes to save lives through better planning and government actions aimed at preventing suicide. These passages of his measures require the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation incorporates protective fencing in road projects to limit suicides. Additionally, Rep. Schlossberg has successfully published the adoption of his legislation, encouraging colleges and universities to establish suicide prevention plans, legislation to establish an emergency responder mental health, wellness, and stress management program in Pennsylvania. Please welcome our panelists. Welcome and bienvenidos.
You're on the front line, everyone's watching. You know it's serious, we're getting closer, this isn't over. The pressure's on, you feel it, but you got it all, believe it. When you fall, get up, oh, oh, and if you fall, get up, eh, eh. Tamina, sangalewa, 'cause this is Africa.
Se escucha. Yeah. Have a seat, mi casa es su casa. Hey, that was your cafe. Do you still have the cafe? And so you're still there in Reading, even though you're busy legislating for us?
So my retired mom is holding on the fort, right? We got to keep the tradition alive, the culture going, and that great food, you know, reaching people's tummies.
That's awesome. And did I hear a clap for Joannis who moved from New York to Pennsylvania? She brought all her talents with her to Pennsylvania. And thank you, Representative Schlossberg. I know it's a busy schedule, right? It's election year.
Yes.
Are we getting ready to vote, folks?
Vote on Tuesday, the primary day. Democrat or Republican, please go out and vote. We need you.
Please go out to vote. It is the primary season, correct? But getting ready for the big elections in November. And all elections are very important. ¿Verdad que sí, María?
Yes, every election is very, very important.
Pennsylvania voice.
Pennsylvania voice, yes. And probably these primary are very, very important because you elect the people that can really go to your community and help you. Not the president, but Absolutely.
They're all important, but don't you think the local elections are even more so?
Even more local election, the most near of you, the possibility that you have to elect those that can serve you, and is the most important part of the democracy here in the United States. So we have to use that right.
And that's part of the definition of being civically engaged, right? Can you give us your interpretation?
Yes, I have some notes here, and I'm going to use some of my notes in order to not forget anything. So, as you said, civic engagement is fundamental for the democracy. But for me, is lifeblood. It's the active and the necessary participation of people in the life of their communities. It involves individuals in activities that address community needs and contribute to the public good, making it a crucial element for the survival and progress of our society. And this participation could be in many forms. One of it could be participating in electoral process, as we were talking about, such as voting. But let me remind something that is very important for our immigrant community. You must be a US citizen, 18 or older at the moment of voting, and registered to vote. However, if you are not a US citizen, you are very welcome in Pennsylvania to do civic engagement in another way, which is you don't need to be a citizen to run and to register programs of registering voters. You can knock on voters' door to remind them to get out to vote. So both works are very crucial to our democracy and are very important in the civic engagement. In our organization, Pennsylvania Voice, we coordinate the effort of more than 65 organizations, many of them grassroots organizations that target communities of colors in 25 counties that are right now the one that experience the fastest growth in Pennsylvania. Other civic engagement methods could be volunteering, community service, advocacy efforts, and for me the most important part is that you are working to change policies, to add more policies to make the lives of others better.
And that's how you got elected, right?
Absolutely.
That's how everyone gets elected.
Yes.
Is through civic engagement. Explícanos, Giovanni.
So you have to be an active participant of your community. You see something, say something, do something, right? So to be civically engaged, it goes beyond, helping people get elected into office, registering to vote. That's all part of it. But it also means you look out for your neighbors, your neighborhood, right? Your local parks. You make time to be part of the solution, right? Because we identify so many problems in our communities, but we have to actively be seeking and be part of those solutions. And I want to stress Maria's point about local government. Local government is the one that really directly impacts your quality of life. So it's very important for you to be engaged at the local level. And elections happen every year, twice a year. Every year, twice a year. So we need people to be engaged in the process because you vote for us so we could vote for you, right? And what I mean by that, we vote on your behalf because we're making decisions at the state level that are going to either help or hurt you. So we need everyone at the table.
And just to expand on what Johanny just said, civic engagement isn't some kind of esoteric non-tangible thing. It can be something that's very direct and has a very direct impact on your lives, and it doesn't just have to be something that's inherently political, right? Like Johanny and I go to Harrisburg, and whenever we're in session, we're fighting on behalf of our constituents, and sometimes that leads to like political fights over really hot button issues. But civic engagement doesn't always have to be about life or death. It can be something as basic as the quality of your neighborhood, the literal quality of your streets, or the quality of your children's education. And getting involved in neighborhood associations or school board efforts or educational groups, that's civic engagement, especially if it's something that you are passionate about or has a direct impact on your life or the life of your neighbors.
So you said a hot button topic, right? Hot button issue. We know that immigration is one of those hot button issues, especially, and please, I don't mean to offend anybody, but it's the reality, right? We got a group that just sits there and participates in fear-mongering on the issue of immigration. They refuse to work on solutions, on real solutions, even when you do present them real solutions. So, I mean, how does anyone want to be or get involved in that, especially if you're emigrating, not immigrating, emigrating. Puerto Ricans who are U.S. citizens emigrate to the United States, the continental U.S. We cannot vote for the President of the United States while we are residents in Puerto Rico. So when we emigrate here, and they want to include us in the immigration issue, how do you meet those challenges? Maria, ayúdame.
Well, Puerto Ricans have the U.S. citizens since 1920. And this is what is going on when we need to move to the U.S. for different reasons, looking for better opportunities, same as other immigrants that arrive to this country. Sometimes we do not know that we have the right to vote for the president and for other candidates, because we living in Puerto Rico do not have that opportunity. But at the same time, as we were speaking before, for us it's a little difficult to engage because sometimes we are identified like that we are privileged of having that document that is very important. But I was reflecting in a meeting, the first meeting that I had with immigrants community when I arrived to York, Pennsylvania in 2019. And in that meeting, I was hearing members of that community expressing how difficult is the separation of families, how difficult is living in a place that is not your country. And everything that they were saying resonated to me in the same way, because I was not living in my country. My family is divided. I have 4 children, 2 of them in Puerto Rico, 2 of them in the USA. And no matter I can take a plane right now and visit them, I need the money to do that. So it's not that everyone can do that. So, but what I have learned here is that this is now my home, and I need my community to receive the best. I think that we deserve the best. So I am very engaged of bringing the message to every Puerto Rican that it's important to participate, it's important to register, it's important to be activated. It's important to also raise your hand and be a candidate. Why not? And this is the same for everyone that has the requirements to vote. We need that this democracy in Pennsylvania change to be a multiracial democracy in order for every one of us could be reflected in those, in the legislature, in the local politicians, everywhere that you have making decision position. We should occupy those spaces in proportionate way, because right now we are 26% of the population, and when you look, for example, at the Senate, how many of Latino are in the Senate? 0.
Are you talking about the state Senate?
In the state Senate, it's 0. How many at the House? 6. So that means that our 25%, we are now not only underserved, not only vulnerable, we are also underrepresented, and we need to change that. And civic engagement could be the key.
And that's very important. And I mean, sometimes, and you know, everything matters. Sometimes I feel man without a country myself. Because it could be because of your name, first and last name. It could be because you don't look like a typical, like they would like you to look like.
Language.
Language. I think I speak English well, and hablo un poquito de español también con acento. So I have an accent here, and I have an accent in my parents' birthplace. So there's a lot of challenges. How do you, and this question is for both of our reps. So you have folks like myself, you have the immigrants immigrants, not the Puerto Ricans who are immigrant, because we're also going through those issues when we come here. How do you engage us and young people, right? Because that's another topic. How do you engage them in politics, voting, and just being civically engaged?
So I'm the proud daughter of immigrants. My parents came here from the Dominican Republic. My mom became a U.S. citizen. My dad remained a permanent resident because he was very patriotic. He felt like he was going to give up on his country if he became a citizen. Como un bien de patria, right? That's how he said it. But in any case, I think it's about modeling behavior, right? So I step up to the plate. You know, I never in a million years imagined that I would be here as a state representative because I hated politics with a passion. Don't ask me the names or the roles or positions. I couldn't tell you. However.
That's not a test.
Huh?
That's not a test for you to get off.
When I moved into the city of Reading, right, as an adult, and again, I was involved in voter registration drives back home where I worked. But it wasn't until I arrived to the city of Reading, which is really small in comparison to New York City, where I realized the role that politics played in our lives and how important it was to stay active, to ask questions, to be involved. Because I realized that people at the local level were making decisions without our input. And again, the city of Reading is kind of small compared to where I came from. And as a small business owner, I had a lot of local electeds come in to eat a Cuban sandwich, right? To hang out, to have meetings. Yet they're meeting every week, and every other week they're voting on ordinances and local laws. And I'm like, you think you could have asked me before you made a decision to increase health permit fees, for example, right? So by getting involved, I quickly turned my restaurant into a community hub, a voter registration site. I call it a 411 center because it was about making people aware about the needs of their community and also giving them a role and recommendations as to how they can be useful and purposeful in helping change the dynamics. So I believe is that, sometimes, I felt like I had to sacrifice and step up to the plate to be the change that I sought, right?
Great answer. So I am, let me take a step back for a second. I'm the grandson of immigrants. And the truth, and there's a bit of an irony to all of the fear-mongering and demagoguing about immigration, is that unless you are a Native American, no one in America isn't an immigrant, right? And we seem to have forgotten about that. And it's really remarkable the speed at which we've forgotten about that when it benefits certain political parties and elected officials. So, let me add, I'm not just the grandson of immigrants, I'm also the grandson of Holocaust survivors. So my family, who came here on my mom's side, came here fleeing the worst of humanity, looking for a better life. And I am not, by any stretch of the imagination, the only one in that story. Now, that being said, I'm a third-generation immigrant, so I'm not stupid enough to think that my experiences are anything similar to Johanny's, or I'm sure many of you in this room. So my first job when it comes to engaging the immigrant community is to shut up and listen. And I'll be the first one to say that. And that's what we who are lucky enough to be more established in this country have to do to begin with. Now, from there, what I will say is my job as an elected official is to make sure that every member of my community is welcome, but that has to be in more than just words. It's also in our actions and in our policies. As an elected official who has represented large swaths of the city of Allentown, I am well aware of the various inequities that our immigrant community, and frankly the entire city of Allentown, faces, especially when it comes to education and to healthcare access. And that belief that we have an obligation to bring in our immigrant community informs my politics, and that belief is informed by my family history. Like my grandparents, who were Holocaust survivors, they didn't just land and magically pull themselves up by their bootstraps. This idea that we can automatically pull ourselves up by our bootstraps and live the American dream, it only exists when supports are behind that whole motion of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. So as a government, our job needs to be to set the conditions to allow everyone to succeed, including and especially our immigrant community. We're very lucky in the Lehigh Valley. We've grown. We're one of the fastest growing areas in the entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And if not for immigrants, you know what would have happened in the Lehigh Valley? We would have shrunk. So our growth is fueled by immigration, and our obligation then is to continue to make sure that we are a welcoming space for all immigrants.
Thank you for that. And you know, he was code talking, and what I kept hearing was access to it all, right? Just on an equal level, no, equitable level. Because Maria talks about, you know, being that voice for the disenfranchised, helping them to that information and to that process. What message do you have that you can share with those folks, or what do you share? Because I mean, your Pennsylvania Voice, chairwoman of the PA Voice,
Senior Director of Programs and Partnership, and that's a great question because sometimes we feel like that also, that we are unheard, that no one is taking us in consideration, and usually what I do is I remember history, the history of this country. This is a new country when you compare with the rest of the world. And in this country, slavery was legal. And I imagine that having a force of workers for free make many companies to really do everything to not change that reality. But what happened? Black people begin to organize, begin to raise their voice. They fight back. And abolitionists heard them, and they could abolish slavery. Let's move to the right to vote. What we have today is not what happened at the beginning. The second president of the United States, John Adams, established that only white men that possess land, have money, were the only one that could vote. Imagine what he thought by that time about women and about black people. But today, women, no matter your race, and people, no matter their race, they can vote. And those consequences have not been coincidental, have not been a gift from the sky. This is because people, probably without money, probably without connection, decided to change that reality. 1974 was when women could apply on their name for credit card. Many of us were already born during that time. So we were born in a time that if you were a woman, you were not entitled to ask for a credit card in your name. That was the other day. So transformations are going to happen in the way that people that are affected of those issues decide to take action. So that is my message. We need to really raise our voices. We have to put outside the fear and be brave and fight.
So she spoke of transformation. How can you go into transformation when people feel disenfranchised, disillusioned, disheartened by the current state of politics in the U.S.?
You go first.
Are you asking how do you create that transformation? How do you help people believe again in government and their power to vote, right? So several things, right? So one, I think civic education begins at school. I mean, it should begin at home, but we're not teaching it at school. I think that we omit certain parts of history that we teach in school. It's almost like we have to teach our children a sense of pride, right? Of living here, being American, of being, from the United States, regardless of where they come from. And, it's also accountability, right? When I go out and when I'm talking to people, and even in my restaurant, like it's almost like I've been able to I purposely and intentionally have used whatever resources I have to inform, educate, empower, engage. Right? I've done that. I've committed to doing that. I'm responsible for that because I believe that, each one teaches one, right? So it's on each and every one of you in this room, on this panel, to everyone that you speak to engage them and really inform them. And, even in my restaurant, it's like anybody that would come in for a cup of coffee, whatever, I keep stacks of voter registration drives on my counter. And I talk to them about why it's important. And some of them are not eligible, but I still say, but there's more that you can do. Right? Because you can be part of the process even if you're not a U.S. citizen, even if you don't have the right to vote, while you're working towards that. So, and I don't know if I'm answering the question.
Oh, you are. You are.
And also I'm very raw and real, right? Because, we know our community, and that's why representation is also of importance, and that's why representation matters, because I can connect with a lot of those folks.
And I see that because you and I have shared in many spaces. You make yourself available to people, so you are part of making sure that it's transformational for everybody, accessible to everybody.
Two things I want to add to that. First, transformation occurs best when it's one-on-one. There are multiple studies that show that the most effective way to actually convince someone to do something politically isn't a TV ad or a social media ad. That helps. We wouldn't do it if it didn't help. But it's one-on-one, and it's door knocking, phone calls, direct field contacts. And that leads me to my second point, which is the best way to end cynicism about government and politics has to occur on a local level. At the statewide level and at the federal level, direct access to your elected official. I mean, Johanny, we were having this conversation. We represent about 65,000 people, so access to us is not challenging. You start talking about the governor or something like that, obviously more of an issue. But on a local level, when you can really easily interact with your elected officials, when you can pick up the phone and call them, and if they're worth their salt, then they're going to call you back, and you can convince them to do something, that makes a difference. So I really think that making transformation occur at the societal level has to be in one-on-one and has to be at the local level, because that's when you can actually really see results. That's why what you were saying before about local elections, people come out and vote the most in presidential elections. That's insane to an extent, because your school board elections and your local elections have a much more direct and tangible impact on your life than anything that happens at the national level.
And if I may add to that as well, because even in our role as state representative, we have resources, we have staff, we have information, access to information. So in my office, I make it a point to use all those resources to pay attention to my community members, acknowledge them, recognize them, highlight them, celebrate them, right? Because too often we get caught up on watching all the negativity that we're exposed to in the news. So I make it a point of, whether it's your birthday, to reach out and say happy birthday or send you a card. If you've accomplished something, or even if you're celebrating an anniversary, we pay attention to as much as we can. Newspaper, social media, everything and anything, to just make sure that people know that we're here. We want them to know that we are available to them, that there's so many services, right? Because I think Julissa said this earlier, knowledge is power, and I truly wholeheartedly believe that. So the more we're disseminating information and gathering and letting people know that we're real people. Absolutely. And we show up.
And thank you for that. COVID exposed everything that was wrong, right? It gave it that, I heard an amen out there. Yeah, they did. And they're shining bright. Yeah, so it exposed everything that was wrong fundamentally, because it gave it that national spotlight, but it also exasperated some of our current problems. That's why we're having Latino Health Summit. I'm hoping there's conversations about mental health, right? Because, my God, you can go nuts just watching all the foolishness that's going around. So, I mean, how does civic engagement and just all of this affect your mental health, your own personal mental health?
Well, let me tell you what we do in Pennsylvania Boys. We run 3 programs. The first one is civic engagement, but it's specifically about voter registration, is specifically about turnout, and our partners are the ones that execute that job, and they target specifically communities that are communities of color. So their messengers are part of those communities. And what, for example, for the primaries, they already registered 10,000 new voters, and now they're right now knocking on doors to invite them to vote, to ask them what are their plans to get out and vote, and to really participate in this important process. We are right now, working towards the presidential, which is in November, and we hope to register more than 60,000 people that are specifically from our community. And why we limit it to our community? The reason is that because first of all, we are underrepresented, and for our community, it's more difficult to vote. So open access to everyone is important in this state. And one of the other programs that we run, the name is Voting Right and Election Administration. And those partners that are there are working, identifying what Pennsylvania can do to be more accessible in the voting process. And let me share something with you. In 2022, Lawyers Journal presented the result of a survey that they did, where they qualify how accessible is voting in every state. And do you know where is the rank of Pennsylvania? 32. Pennsylvania is the 5th state with most population, and being ranked 32 is bad for the whole democracy of the country, but it's really bad for us. So in this work group that we run, we identified after surveying voters that one of the reasons that the turnout could be increased more is if the date of the election is not the only date that you can vote. In more than 20 states, the date of the election is the last day that you can vote. So early vote in person through a machine could make more people to access to the ballot. Not only our community, everyone. Another option is that you don't have to register until a specific day. In Pennsylvania, you have to register before 15 days before the election. If you do not register during that time, no matter you wanted to go and vote, and no matter you qualify because you are a US citizen, you have the age, but you were not registered, so you cannot vote. In many other states, the same day of the election, you can register and vote at the same time. I have good news. We mobilized our partners and we found a champion at the House. So our speaker, Joanna McClinton, is going to introduce a bill to give us those rights. And I know that both of the representatives that are here are also supporters. And we need to continue identifying those possibilities, bring it to the representatives that are the ones that make decisions, and begin to make Pennsylvania more accessible for everyone to vote. And the Senate is another story because, thank for the work that we did in the redistricting, which is a process that not many of us knew about it, and because it are some of the hidden processes in the democracy that instead of you as a voter decided who are going to be your candidates, what is going on is the opposite. Candidates are decided who are going to be voting for me. So those things are important, and engaging our community, sometimes we subestimate that our community is not capable to understand this. But if you give me 2 minutes, I can share something that happened when I was running the redistricting process, specifically in York County, Lancaster, and Dauphin. I remember this lady, when she understood everything about the redistricting and how our power could be break and diminish, she told me this: oh, so it's not because we are not smart enough that we are in making decision position. It is because the process, the system, is stopping us from participating. And yes, she understood that day that she has to really activate herself because she doesn't want to keep away of everything that is happening, that are affecting their community. She wants to be the person and engaging others to change how things are. And I know that you are from Lancaster, and Lancaster, we could add another House district, and now we have one black other person in the House because of that. So we cannot, we know that it's difficult, but we have to work. We have to trust our people. We have to talk with them with honesty. This country is excellent. It's beautiful. They open their arms to all of us, but there are things that needs to be fixed, and we're here to do that.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. Immigration reform is essential. We know it's the hot button issue in this country. Our economy, whether it's a local, and you mentioned that earlier, Representative Schlossberg, how if we didn't have this immigration, not only in the Lehigh Valley, I can remember Lancaster, where I'm originally from. Lancaster was very desolate when I grew up. Everybody had gone out to the suburbs, the malls, and all the homes. And look it up. It was the Hispanic community that started propping up the local businesses, right? We had an influx of folks from New York, from Dominican Republic, that came and adopted Lancaster as their own city, their new place of that they call home. We had an influx of Colombians. They were the new business owners who were supporting our local economies. Then we started organizing and strategizing, doing the movements and getting folks involved, civically involved, to learn about school board and city politics, and we started affecting those changes in the community. Lancaster now is all over public national media, is one of the best places to visit and stay, and guess what? Many of us that grew up in the city can't even afford to live in the city, including my own mother, who's lived most of her adult life in the city and is constantly being run out of her apartments because they keep increasing wages. Immigration is really important to bring innovation, to bring that hard work ethic. If you don't know what hard work looks like, go out to the fields and see them. See our Hispanic community, see what they bring to our country. What leadership opportunities for Latinos in Pennsylvania are there? to be involved civically and to address this immigration. Somebody say something.
No, and I can. And again, the answer, fortunately, when it comes to civic and political engagement, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? It's not as if you are interested in immigration reform and want to get involved in making sure that there is a more fair and just immigration policy in the United States. There's a struggle for groups. There are a slew of organizations of all stripes that you can potentially get involved with. I can't think of any. Despite what some of my colleagues will tell you, including with a recent press conference this week, at the state level, we don't deal with immigration, not really. It's primarily a federal issue. Now, there are state ramifications, but they tend to deal with issues like job creation, education, or driver's license issues. So it's not something that we deal a ton with, but there are no shortage of groups that you can potentially get involved with that deal with immigration, and those groups can tell you exactly where you can spend your time and your efforts making the biggest impact.
So, in my local area, Reading in particular, I mean, you even you have organizations like the Greater Reading Immigration Project. There's Make the Road. I think it needs to start back at home, wherever you live. Like, start identifying those organizations that are having impact in your community that you'd like to support, that you'd like to volunteer, that you'd like to be a part of. And that's where it starts, right? It starts local, and then you kind of like work your way up. Also, I find that a lot of my colleagues and myself, we're always mentoring, you know, we're always helping, we're always uplifting our community, right? As we learn, we share, and I think that's important because sometimes, you know, you can't ever forget where you come from. And you got to make sure that you're rising with your community, and everybody has a role to play. So I say, check your organizations back at home, figure out where there might be gaps in resources and just, gaps and voids, and just step in or step up.
And I can add that some of those grassroots organizations like CASA, Make the Road, PEAK, and there's other one, they also run programs of civic engagement. And as I told you before, for example, to register voters, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen. You need the work permit. And also to work for the turnout, you can also do that job. And I can remember when I was working before PA Voice, I was staff of CASA. In 2019, we run the census program with PA Voice. And I had almost like 60 canvassers knocking on doors in some counties. And those canvassers, I think that probably a dozen of them today are leaders of CASA, because there's no small job, you know? Every job that you can have, work hard and lead by example. And you are going to find that in some of these organizations, they already have this ladder of professional development that can help each one of you and to continue and thrive in what you are doing.
May I just one more point? Also, visit your local government websites, right? You know, at the city websites, because there's boards, authorities, and commissions. That there's a tons of I know in the city of Reading in particular, there's always like an abundance of vacancies, and it's always the same people that get appointed because no one's applying. So I would encourage you to visit, you know, whether you're in a borough, a township, city, whatever. Look at your website, look at your government website, and figure out where those vacancies might be, and where, again, your skills, your time could be, you know, you can be purposeful.
So I'm going to ask Maria, how can people who are not yet citizens of the United States play an appropriate and active role in building or continuing a healthy democracy?
Well, for me, they are fundamental. When you do not have the right to vote and you suffer injustices, you can feel like your hands are like you cannot move them. So when you are like that, you are the best person to introduce the importance of voting to those that can vote. So those testimonies of what is happening in your community, that the lack of services that you do not receive because you don't have the U.S. citizenship, is the best opportunity that that person have to engage the rest of the community. And I think that when you decided to immigrate from your country to come to this country, if you decide to continue in the shadow, you are not doing many difference because you are invisible. And I understand, that people are afraid of deportation, but at the same time, I think that you are so brave when you decide to leave behind what you have in your country, and sometimes with babies on arms, you cross that river or you cross the frontier deciding to look for a better life. You cannot be in the shadow, you cannot be hide. You need to really step out and begin speaking with others and share what your suffering are, because that's the way that we can teach those that do not see us how is the life when you are an immigrant. And I think that the U.S. citizen doesn't change ever, that you are going to continue being an immigrant. And I know as a Puerto Rican, no matter, you explain that we emigrate, but I am an immigrant. This is not my country. I have my country. And I live here. I love where I live. I love Pennsylvania. I will continue working hard, engaging voters to transform this state to be a multiracial democracy. But at the same time, I will be giving testimonies that I heard and also share mine in order to make others participate. So being an immigrant should not be anyway a limitation for anyone to thrive.
And, it just brought up to my attention that many of us, even though we might feel like, or people make us feel like we don't belong, many of us, sign on the dotted line. We give up our lives to serve this country. I'm not going to toot my horn, but I did serve the United States Marine Corps. And I signed my life away because I love this country. I was born here. I'm a 4-for-4 fan in Philadelphia. I love the Sixers and the Eagles and the Flyers. And I go to games and I cheer, who needs to be cheered. And I also boo who needs to be booed. And so we're part of the fabric of this country, of our cities. What advice, and I'm going to lean to the left here, and I didn't mean to say it like that either. But they are up to my left. What advice do you have for aspiring leaders from the Hispanic and Latino communities, but not just from the Hispanic and Latino communities, because I'm hoping that there's leaders from all spectrums, right? That way we can have different voices and that our needs are being met, not just in the Hispanic community. What advice do you have for aspiring leaders, not just in the...
Advice first.
Advice.
Yeah.
Te lo digo en español.
Que se me va el avión de vez en cuando.
No, for real, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, but sometimes our brain is either in Spanish mode or English mode, and it's a beautiful
Yes, I hate when that happens.
It is a beautiful thing.
So what is advice for aspiring leaders?
¿Qué consejo le das a
Claro.
nuestro...
I mean, first, recognize that you are a leader, right? I'm always what I do for me, like I'm always self-reflecting, right? Creating inventories of what I'm good at, what I'm not so good at, and trying to always better my skills so I can be a better human being first and foremost. So advice, don't give up. You know, assess, make an inventory of the things that you're really good at. What do you enjoy doing? And, you know, for women in the space, right, a lot of times we create our own obstacles for ourselves because we're too much in our head doubting ourselves and our capacity, right? So recognize who you are, accept that you are a natural born leader, right? Sometimes you just need a little push, right? And I think, you know, I'm going to reference again Julissa Calderon because she was on the stage saying this, but it's like you have to recognize your power, own it, embrace it, and utilize it, right? You know, we're waiting for you. Like, make that step. And don't be afraid. There's going to be a lot of doors that are going to close on in your face. You just keep looking for that door that's going to remain open for you. And if not, you break down a door, right? So don't ever give up. You know, be proud of where you come from, who you are, and embrace that because that makes you who you are. And everyone in this room is very powerful. You're a powerful human being. You know, get out of your own way and just exercise that power that you were born with. Don't be afraid. I always say, walk in faith, not in fear.
Two things come to mind for me. First of all, understand where you want to lead. Because being a leader is one thing, but you have to be able to apply that leadership to a specific area. I always knew I wanted to get into government and politics. I was just a little unsure of where specifically and what path. But if you want to get involved in government or politics, find the people, figure out what your pathway in is, identify the organizations that can help you get in, and that leads me to my second point. Getting involved in almost any industry or sector is impossible without a good mentor. I would never have achieved the level of success I had if I hadn't been smart enough to know that I wasn't that smart and to find people that could help me through. My mentor, the woman who I worked at when I was in college as an undergrad and then in grad school, was a woman named Jennifer Mann. She held my position previous to me, and if not for Jen, I never would have achieved any level of success. So identify the people who can help you get there, and then ask if they're willing to sit down and shed their time and spend their time and expertise with you, and try to find a way up from there.
+1 to both. Definitely. I can add that recognize that there are cultural differences among all Latinos. That is why we should not limit ourselves only to the Latino community. We have to open and join efforts with other communities, the Black community, the AAPI community, the Arab community. Together, we suffer almost the same issues. So that means that let's, instead of fighting among us, let's join forces and target where we can make changes. And another advice is to build relationships. We have to talk to people. And more than us talking, we have to listen people. What are their necessities? What are their realities? I could say also that bring your culture to the table. Don't hide it. Be visible, you know? Bring it, your culture means that you are proud of who you are, but also show confidence in yourself. Know your history, the history of your people. And I need to emphasize that it's not the history that probably you learn at school. It's not the same the history that conquerors and empires tell. Learn the history that probably your ancestors has passing through generations in your family, and decide in which position you are, you know, about that history. And once you decided, defend that position. And my last advice is that to win, you need more than one. Winning is not an individual action or consequence. You need to be a team. And to be a team, you have to be humble and be transparent, and establish goals. And once you establish your goals, create your plan, create your strategy, and work together toward that goal.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I like the part where you said that embrace your culture and share it. You know, there's good in all cultures, so don't be afraid to share that identity and the stories. We do that a lot in the WEPA Empowerment Center that's available to everybody, and we allow people to share their stories with us, and that's how we learn. We're going to move on to a question and answer. There's Pennsylvania. It is an election year, national election year, right? I did say that earlier. Primaries are on Tuesday. Pennsylvania is a huge swing state, right? Very important state. And John F. Kennedy said that when he was running for President of the United States, and he mentioned Pennsylvania being very important. Do we have questions from our audience? I can't hardly see here. There's a few folks that are here. Anybody have questions for our political leaders? Anyone? No? Everybody's ready to go.
End of the conference is always really hard for Q&A.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, all right,
Maybe that's
enough out
why,
of you.
That's why I was volunteered to be the moderator. But I did enjoy myself here. Maybe you can answer this question, or if you choose to do so. And I did mention that it is an election year, Pennsylvania being the swing state. Latino and Hispanic groups represent the fastest growing segments of our population. Please share the importance of voting to be the voice of those that cannot vote.
And this I can speak to, and I think actually giving an outside perspective is a little bit more helpful to answer this question appropriately. Look, as an elected official, we do the best job that we possibly can, but the truth is that every elected official, no matter how good they are or how bad they are, is motivated by the desire to get reelected. And that means if you vote, we pay attention to you. It's really very simple in that regard. If communities do not vote, they do not get attention paid. They do not get attention paid in terms of resources, in terms of time, in terms of meeting, in terms of presence, which means that it's incumbent upon every community to get out there and vote. There is a reason that you see elected officials of all stripes, but especially those running at the national level, speaking very, very specifically to certain demographics and certain ethnic and racial groups. If you vote, you get attention paid. If you don't, you don't.
Giovanni?
Wow. So for me, voting is like do or die, right? People died, women were tortured and died for us to have the right to vote. So what are we waiting for? For that right to be also taken away from us as women? So it is your obligation, it is your duty, it is your responsibility. That is how you choose how you want to live. That is how you make a difference also in your community. Who you elect to speak on your behalf. Who do you elect to make decisions on your behalf, right? That's why voting is so important. That's the only way we're going to find solutions, by putting the right people in these positions to make the right decisions that benefit all of us. So please go out and vote. Please take your neighbors to vote, your relative to vote. I make it a point to always take my mother. I go, no, mom, let's go. Ponte la chancleta, vamos. Right? That's right.
Let's go.
So everybody has a responsibility. Take yourself, take your neighbor, take someone with you.
Thank you. I want to thank George Fernandez for putting this platform together, and please continue to do so. Our community needs this space to be able to share good advice and for as we work towards a better future. I want to thank Maria del Carmen Gutierrez Rodriguez. Lo dije en español. No, I didn't say it in English, see? Makes a difference. I also want to thank Representative Schlossberg and Representative Joanny Cepeda Freites. Así mismo es.
So the first time I ever said her name in caucus, I completely botched it.
How did you say it?
I probably like really made it like as white as possible. Did I say like Freites or something probably? But then immediately after I was like, I messed that up, right? Yes, Schlossberg, it's Freites. I said, okay, I'm gonna get it now. We've been good ever since.
Yeah. Everything matters, folks. When we take the time out to pronounce people's name correctly, we're actually showing them a sign of respect and that they do matter. So that's.
Yes.
Can I get a round of applause for our folks here? Oh, wait a minute. I see a hand. Is that a hand? It is a hand. I think you're getting a mic, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, you are.
Yeah.
I can actually hear you just fine without the microphone, so that speaks volumes about your volume, so well done.
So my name is Brenda. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I thought about, I had the opportunity when I was working for the family centers in Pittsburgh to help out. Her name is Elaine Harris. She always promotes the importance of voting. So working with a diverse population of people, I had found this video made by Yellow Pain, My Vote Don't Count. And that was such a great impact when I started showing that video. And you said how to get people to vote on the local level instead of just the presidential. A lot of people I found out forgot or don't know how important the local voting on the local level is. And that video helped. So if we can get that video out to be shown more around the time of voting, just keep educating people on that, the importance of the local level. Okay? I just wanted to share that as well, and I want to say thank you guys. I got here a little late. I apologize for that. But as far as the local level and as far as like community, I think it's very important that COVID really exposed a lot, okay? And my observation of COVID, it was to bring us closer together as community in our diversity. Even with the politicians, at this time, I believe it was for the politicians to come together and put down the Democrat, because you know, y'all, each group has something important to give. And if they bring that together to serve the people, I believe that we can do more and call and institute another form of community as one. So bringing our gifts and talents together, because COVID was a global, it affected everybody. Nobody was exempt. So I believe if the politicians can come together, you know, Democrats got something to give, Republicans got something to give. Let's just come together and serve the people.
Power to the people, right?
Amen.
Yeah, and then if they don't, then we stop everything until they figure it out.
Go out and vote in the primaries this Tuesday in November, and then we get to do it all over again, right? Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to our guests. And please, a big round of applause to the Latino Health Summit.
All right. Thank you to our panelists and moderators for engaging in this conversation and helping us end the day on a high note. I know folks were a little shy with the questions, but if you do have questions or comments after the session, you can always go to our Huba app, start a conversation, and I am sure that our speakers will be more than happy to follow up on this topic with you. And before we head out today, I just want to say that I want to express my most sincere gratitude to each and every one of you for gracing us with your presence today. It has been amazing having you at this 4th annual Latino Health Summit. Thank you also to our sponsors, our volunteers, our partners, team members, because your support and commitment has been instrumental in making today's event possible. So let's stay well, let's stay connected, and let's carry forward all this positivity and energy from today. You are more than welcome to join us tomorrow as well, as we are going to celebrate our Community Day and the Adelante Health and Wellness Expo. Thank you so much. Have a good night, and until next time.